All right, well, hello and welcome. Let's talk about Jahmyr Gibbs. Thursday Night Football kind of amplifies the current NFL storylines, and something we are shocked about as a football world is the baffling usage of Jahmyr Gibbs because he is being used at a very, very low rate. But let's talk about him as a prospect. Let's talk about him as, coming out of Bama, smashing our draft capital expectations. Whether or not he'll be a good player or not, how do I feel about this pick? What's his role going forward? We'll get to all that in today's video. So let's get to one of the biggest problems with Jahmyr Gibbs and why it does or does not matter. This is why a lot of people before the draft, including myself, were kind of pumping the brakes on the idea that Jahmyr Gibbs was going to go absolutely berserk in the NFL. Detroit loves using their bruiser backs. They did it last year with Jamal Williams instead of Swift, and now they're doing it with David Montgomery instead of Jahmyr Gibbs. And you can criticize them all you want for burning the 12th overall pick on Gibbs, which I will be doing in this video because I think that was a wildly irresponsible waste of value. But Demont scored 3 touchdowns tonight. This is a 3-1 football team. Dan Campbell doesn't care about underutilizing Gibbs. Ben Johnson isn't paid to give Gibbs, a maximized role in this offense. I know as people who are obsessed with fantasy and obsessed with Madden, we want Jahmyr Gibbs and all these skill position players to go ham, especially rookies, especially ones who took him early in dynasty leagues. But first of all, he measured at 5'8", 199 pounds. That is not workhorse size whatsoever. That is not the archetype that Detroit wants to be using inside the 5-yard line. That is not the archetype Detroit wants to be using on 3rd and short. We've seen this already play out for the past 2 years with Jamal Williams. But back to Gibbs' weight, we assumed that he would weigh in literally anywhere from the 200 to 205 range at the combine in March, but he came in smaller than that. For a guy who has topped out at 35% of his carries throughout his college career, Detroit must be planning on riding D-Mont until the tires fall off. Jahmyr Gibbs has never ever put up strong rushing efficiency throughout his time in college football. Never ever. His team carry percentage through his 3 years in college football were 31 as a freshman at Georgia Tech, 32 as a sophomore at Georgia Tech, and 35 at Alabama his junior year. That's very, very low. He had 4 carries inside the 5-yard line his junior year at Alabama and 10 carries with 2 or fewer yards to go for a first down last year for Bama as well. And I don't know his conversion rate on all those statistics, but he had 151 rushing attempts and a large, I want to say, very, 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 very substantial part of those were not high-value rushing touches. But we saw what Detroit likes to do last year with Jamal Williams. Granted, he's not there anymore, but they love using a bruiser back in the red zone to punch it in and make things easy for themselves. But this is where I'm very confused because Goff last year was pretty much top 5 in every red zone passing stat as far as number of attempts, touchdowns, and everything. So did they just have so many scoring chances last year that it didn't matter? And, aggregated, Jamal Williams just happened to score a bunch of touchdowns? I don't know. But Demont, for being a bigger back, had never really went ham in the NFL. He's always been a pretty poor runner throughout his career. I'm talking, he's a perennial sub 4 yards per carry guy, but he has 3 incredibly valuable traits. Not only can he punch it in within the 5-yard line all the time, not only does he have plus hands as a receiver, but he is a good pass blocker as well. And okay, so Gibbs is not a good pure runner or a pass blocker. That's fine. Nothing about his profile indicates that he will have success at the next level as a runner. That is completely okay. However, we did not care about that as people that were trying to evaluate Gibbs going into the NFL because he didn't get taken by Detroit 12th overall because he was supposed to be, the goal line back and the 3rd and short guy. He is no joke the most dynamic receiving back we have had coming out of college since Christian McCaffrey. Just wildly ridiculous market share and target share numbers. He's literally a wide receiver that happens to have a running back position designated to him. To go along with this, he has legit 4.37 game speed. He was supposed to play a big part of Detroit's offense, and while, yes, this pick was remarkably questionable considering the opportunity cost, and they probably could have stacked him at 18. And there were reports that if they had not traded back and gotten the Laporta pick in the process, they would have been comfortable taking him at 6. Now, the reason I remember this is because I saw it, and I was like, dang, taking him at 6 would have been really stupid, especially because Bijan went 2 picks later. But this is almost irresponsible because when you talk about what they could have had at 6 instead of Gibbs, and luckily they ended up trading back, But the fact that they were fine taking Gibbs potentially over Bijan is, I don't know. That's wild to me because Bijan is just as good of a receiver as Gibbs, but a phenomenal runner as well with an elite tackle breaking profile. And he had more of a propensity to be lined up at wide receiver at Texas than Jahmyr Gibbs did at Bama. I expected Gibbs to come in immediately and be the second passing option in this offense right out of the gate, especially with JMO suspended for 6 games. Granted, I severely underestimated Sam Laporta. That guy looks absolutely insane right now. And, like, I'm not a fan of Jameson Williams at all. Like, bro, earn some targets. 1 catch in your first 23 career games ain't it. But Jahmyr Gibbs was supposed to play a sizable role in this offense. A running back out targeting wide receivers is so rare, but I wouldn't have been surprised if it was the case with Gibbs and JMO. Now, Amon-Ra's obviously going to be the number one there no matter what. But this is where it gets really good. Why did you dump Swift for peanuts and then draft an equivalent talent to Swift? I still think Gibbs is better than Swift. Like, Gibbs still looks insane in his limited touch opportunity. But why did you waste not only the 6th overall pick, you traded back to 12th overall? Why was Gibbs the player you had in mind there when you could have had a player at a premium position that turned your franchise around? And we can make fun of Atlanta all we want for spending the 8th overall pick on a running back, but Bijan fits the identity of that 1930s, ground and pound, try to win the game 17-14 offense so well. But I, along with the rest of the football world, vastly overestimated the Detroit landing spot for Gibbs. Vastly. And then when Ben Johnson came out and said, oh, we're going to use Gibbs, in ways that some people may not think we can, like, I didn't expect them to use him on the bench. Like, bruh, all this being said, I think we'll be having a different conversation with Gibbs later on, and it'll be much more positive because his profile is just so safe. And Detroit will realize it soon enough. It's a long season, and they don't want to give Gibbs the between the tackles touches right away. And that's fine. But when he's averaging like 9 yards per touch or whatever he's averaging now, when it comes time for Detroit's playoff push and eventually trying to win the NFC North, he'll be a game breaker for Detroit. He just has too good of raw skill, raw talent to not be. It might be infuriating for us who want Gibbs to go ham, but if you own any Jahmyr Gibbs in fantasy or dynasty, hold the line, which luckily I don't, but hold the line. You'll be okay. And we'll be having a much different conversation when this is all said and done. He will go ham in this league. I believe it. Detroit's a 3-1 football team. Down the stretch, they will use him once they realize that he can be a game breaker for them.